Hello. All right, I thought I'd read a question from Jasmine. Jasmine says, my name's Jasmine, I'm 15 years old, female. Recently, I've been all in and honouring all my hunger and it was going great. However, just this week, I would say I've been starting to hold back. I've noticed changes in my body and I've been feeling uncomfortable in my skin. I'm still eating my 3 meals every day, but I've been finding it hard to allow myself snacks, dessert, just mental hunger. I had extreme hunger since I started all in, and I have felt like it's definitely gone down. But then again, I don't know if it's me telling myself and forcing myself to believe it's gone down or not. I'll get to the point by saying I'm definitely scared to allow myself to continue eating to my mental hunger. One, because I feel like I've already put on a visible amount of weight and I don't really want to put on a lot more. And two, I'm terrified if I keep allowing myself to eat whatever, I'll go overshoot, and I'm scared my parents will think that people around me, because every time I express this, they say, no, that won't happen, you're young, or that's not in your genes. I'm scared of the possibility that it will happen and they'll judge me. 3, I'm scared that I'm just tricking myself into thinking I have mental hunger and I'm just making it up and I don't actually know when I feel satisfied or not. What does it actually feel like to be satisfied and know that you actually don't want more? I feel like sometimes I can be like, oh, that's okay, that's good enough, or that was good, I'm done now. But then I still feel like I should or I want to eat more. But what if I'm just forcing it? I feel full after meals and throughout the day, yet I found myself thinking of food, and it's usually always the same food: cereal, crackers, chips, bagels. So what if I actually am just becoming a habit to think of these foods? I'm scared and I don't know what to do. Jasmine, I'm smiling because this is just like a narrative of what a lot of people with eating disorders, kind of all the questions that they ask about mental hunger. I am being blind weighed, but I just look at myself and I feel like I've put on a lot of weight. To add, I haven't restricted for long, a little under a year. I've gotten around underweight for my age and height, but I don't think I've restricted long enough to continue being this hungry. Oh, there's a lot in that, isn't it? Well, first of all, there's no rules around how long one needs to have had an eating disorder or restricted food as to how their mental hunger is going to be. So doesn't matter that you've had an eating disorder or been restricting less than a year or whatever it was that you said. That's your body's hungry. So that's that first one. Second of all, honestly, Jasmine, when I read that, all I hear, I know it's sort of all these questions that you've got and all these thoughts going through your head, but all I hear is, I'm afraid. That's basically what it is. Now, a lot of people find that the first couple of weeks where they do unrestricted eating, it's a little bit easier. I call it the honeymoon period, because you know you're underweight, you know you need to gain weight, you know you've been restricting, your mental hunger's raging, it feels like complete freedom, and you're like, yeah, I'm going to go for it. And then after a couple of weeks, the reality kicks in a little bit, and you might notice that you feel a bit different. And that's when people put on the brakes. That is exactly what you don't want to do right then. You do not want to put on the brakes now. Jasmine, please don't. Because if you put on the brakes now, you haven't been doing unrestricted eating long enough to get the neural rewiring done that you need to do. You'll have started the neural rewiring, you'll have started rewiring that fear of weight gain, but you're not nearly done yet, not only after a couple of weeks. And so if you put the brakes on now and you start restricting, which is what you're doing if you're not eating in accordance to mental hunger. I know that you say you're still eating 3 meals, fantastic, but you're still restricting, aren't you? You're not allowing yourself to eat without restriction. And that means you're going to be giving your brain conflicting signals now. You've started to give your brain the message, I'm not afraid of weight gain. We don't need to be afraid of weight gain anymore. You started to build those neural pathways. And now you suddenly stopped and you're starting to use the neural pathways that are saying, I am afraid of weight gain, by restricting food and things like that. And so you can't expect your brain to fully learn its way out of fear of weight gain if you don't really complete the neural rewiring process. And if you're reusing those neural pathways that we want to go away before you've really built those neural pathways that we want, the ones saying, I'm not afraid of weight gain, then you're just not going to make much ground in terms of neural rewiring. And neural rewiring is what recovery is about. Like, that's what gets you fully recovered. You have to rewire that fear of weight gain. Now, it's not going to be rewired yet, which is why you're having this blip, which you notice all this fear of weight gain. I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid, I'm afraid. All of that is basically everything you wrote. It's just saying, I'm really afraid. I know. I know you're really afraid. That's sort of the point. I know that you're really afraid, and I know that it's just kicked in now. The reality has just kicked in this last week. But think about it of the honeymoon period. That's like the practice run. When the reality kicks in, for most people, that's around week 3 or 4 in. When the reality kicks in, that's where the test is. That's where you really, really now get to go. It's like your brains go, whoa, wait a minute. Am I afraid of weight gain? Oh, we are, aren't we? Aren't we? And that's where you get to go, no, we are definitely not, brain. Definitely not. And your brain will go, but. And you're going to go, no, we're definitely not. We're not afraid of weight gain. And you've got to keep on messaging that to your brain by your actions. And those actions are, of course, unrestricted eating. So let's just make sure that I answered all of your questions, Jasmine. Oh, no, you put, what does it actually feel like to be satisfied and know that you actually don't want more? It's a really, really tough question. It's a bit like asking somebody, what does it feel like to be in love? Or what does it feel like to like a person? Or what does it feel like to have a best friend? Or what does it feel like to know that you're tired and want to go to bed? Like, there's all these things that we could say, what does it feel like? That if we try and describe what it actually feels like, we get ourselves and our knickers into a bit of a twist. And you don't need to, because you just know, and it all comes naturally when you're actually there. But if you try and describe it, it's very complicated. So don't overthink this. If you are wondering whether you have mental hunger or not, you have mental hunger. The way that you know that you don't have mental hunger is more of an absence of something than a feeling of something. You will just, one day you will just sort of realize, oh, I didn't think of food for like 3 hours. What the fuck? What's the time? Oh my God. That's how that happens. It's the absence of something. And it's very difficult to describe an absence of something, isn't it? In terms of how do you know that you feel satisfied? Again, I think this is something that is massively overthought. I think that people are given this message that they'll get this sudden kind of like massive feeling of feeling satisfied and not wanting to eat anymore. Whereas it's mostly not that. It's mostly the absence of the desire to continue to eat. That's what I find it to be. Like, you know, I'll be eating, I'll be thinking about something, and then I'll just sort of stop eating, and I just won't be thinking about eating anymore. And I'll have finished what I'm eating, and I've just finished what I'm eating. But I guess if I was given a small portion of something, I'd still think, oh, I want to eat more, and then I'd eat more. But if I'm satisfied, it's not necessarily that I get this big feeling of I'm satisfied. I just don't have the desire to eat anymore. And that's really, I think, again, is something that's difficult to describe because it's the absence of something. And people with eating disorders overthink the feeling satisfied thing or feeling full massively, in the same way they overthink that I need to feel physical hunger. You know, I talk about mental hunger all the time and not physical hunger, because I find physical hunger to be very just elusive and not particularly interesting. And if you get physical hunger, it probably means that you ignore mental hunger. Feeling satisfied is a mental thing as well for the vast majority of people. The vast majority of people who haven't had an eating disorder don't overthink it. It just comes naturally. It just naturally happens. And it's usually not this big physical feeling unless they carried on eating after they sort of knew that they wanted to stop, but they carried on anyway, and then they feel really full, which we do sometimes anyway, and that's fine too. But really, the only thing that you need to focus on is if you're wondering whether you want to eat more, that's mental hunger. Don't question the mental hunger. Doesn't matter, you know, all this, oh, it's a habit, this, that, and the other. Don't worry about any of that. If you're thinking about food, you want to eat food. And it would be very normal for you at this stage to be thinking about food a lot because you're still in energy deficit and want to eat food a lot. And so that's really all you need to focus on. And when your body is out of energy deficit, then you won't be thinking about food as much, and you won't have the desire to eat food as much. You just won't have as much mental hunger. So naturally the amount of food that you're consuming will start to come down. But you're not there yet, are you? Because you're asking all these questions and you're thinking about food. And for those of you that are sort of going, oh, well, now, like, maybe it's because it's a mental fullness thing and that comes first. You just said that. So now I have to think about, maybe I'm thinking I'm full and that means I'm full. Don't even start. That's not how it works. If you are wondering whether you want to eat more food, it means you want to eat more food, because I just said it's the absence of thinking about food. And if you're thinking, oh, maybe I'm full, maybe I'm full, maybe I'm full, maybe that's what I'm trying to find, then you're still thinking about food and eating, aren't you? It's the absence of your brain. When you actually get really satisfied, it's like your brain, and when that mental hunger goes, you're just not on that topic. It's hard to describe because, like I just said, it's the absence of something. And so thinking about or wondering whether you're full, I'm going to put that in the category of mental hunger as well, because you're still thinking about the topic of food, right? I know what you guys are like. All right, bye.